Okay.
Troy sits down and takes it away.
Wasn't my fault.
That was good timing.
Tyler, you ever screwed up when we go off at the wrong time? Well, nobody was talking to you.
What? Okay. Well, if I say good evening. Okay.
Turn your mic on.
Okay. Good evening, Charter Review Commission. It's 6 o'clock, April 30, 2024, and we do have a quorum present, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm still not speaking into my mic, says Gwen. Okay.
Start over.
So you want me to start over? Okay. It's 6. This evening, we're going to have our invocation is going to be given by former Mayor Keene Roy Robinson. Mr. Robinson was the first mayor that I served with when I was on the city council back in 2009. He has served on the city council for 7 years and 2 terms as mayor. And he's also been president of the Keene Chamber of Commerce and been very active in things like our flag program and various activities through the years. So if we can all stand, we'll have Mayor Robinson give our invocation, and then we will have the Pledge of Allegiance and pledge to the Texas flag.
Just before I pray, I want to thank each of you for serving on City Council. We are not the United States Congress, but each of you are representatives of the citizens of this town, and you have a very important job to do. And thank you for that. Let's pray. Father God in heaven, we love you and we thank you so much for blessing our little city. Please bless each of these people as they review the city charter, which is important to our city as far as the direction it's going and the direction it goes in the future. Please give us wisdom. Please guide us in all that we do. And personally, please bless our health and keep our city safe, because we live in troublous times, because we ask all these things in the lovely name of Jesus our Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. I did forget to mention also that Mr. Robinson was on the 2014 Charter Commission, so he has a little bit of experience with what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
This evening, we have our city attorney with us, and I just want to mention that before I go to the consent agenda, we'll probably just go through everything item by item with what he has for us, suggestions for us. So questions can be directed to him. I'll try to keep up with you and recognize you, but if he recognizes you, that's okay. Okay, we have our consent agenda. So we have approval of the Charter Review Commission meeting held Thursday, April 11, and approval of the minutes for the Charter Review Commission meeting held Tuesday, April 23, 2024.
Could I ask that we hold off on this just for a bit? I've asked for a bit of information from our city secretary.
Okay?
Would you mind?
No, have her speak next. She has, are you wanting to present it, or?
She just sent it to me, so if y'all can talk quietly among yourselves, I'll take a look at it and then.
Talk about what? How to proceed? Also, I wonder, we don't have anyone in the audience with anything to present additional to this evening, do we? No? Okay.
Beautiful weather
text
I
it
don't
out?
see it.
Is the text not coming through?
Yeah, the text is here, but I don't see the withdrawal.
Okay. So on the question is on the April 11th minutes, on page 2. I'm so not an iPhone user.
I do see it. Okay, I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Okay,
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
all in favor? Okay,
Oh, that was,
it's unanimous. We have 2 absences. Oh. Yes. Okay, moving forward to item 3A. We do not have additional items from the public. Did anyone else on this commission come up with additional items this week since we last met? We just stand with what we have.
Uh,
And
Yes, we do have an addition. Which section was it?
3.05, I think it was. I don't remember.
Okay. On 3.06, number 7 we added. We want to also add the code of conduct to include spouses and significant others of
Can you?
Which section?
3.06, item 7.
Item 7, okay, thank you.
The purpose of this suggestion was so that the spouses, others cannot be disruptive to the council's or the board meetings' intentions.
As well as the social media rules of conduct would apply to the significant others as well. That's part of the Fort Worth, Mr. Bradbury looked at the Fort Worth Code of Conduct, and is that not correct?
A code of ethic.
Code of Ethics,
Yeah.
rather. And that's where he got the idea, and I think that was a good recommendation, so he wanted to bring it to the commission and see what y'all thought.
so are we adding a number 8?
No.
We went through all of this, we were talking about adding, I'm looking at the wrong thing, sorry, 3.06?
6.
Yes, page 7.
Okay. And then we go, and tell me again where it is.
Item number 7 says repeated violations of the
Yes.
adopted Code of Conduct,
And just add to that.
and just, probably we should go to the Code of Conduct and add that applies, that ordinance should apply to significant others and spouses, but I don't know the exact legal way to make that happen.
Well, we have,
I can see.
see the smoke coming over there.
and you said that Fort Worth also includes social media?
No, they include the wording, not just the city officers, but city officers, board members, their significant others, and spouses.
Okay, I thought, okay, but I heard somebody else also speak about social media.
Rob
Yeah.
spoke about social media.
No defamation on social.
Yeah, the idea was that my wife could speak defamatory comments or put untruths on social media. And if, it's kind of like my responsibility to be in charge of my household and make sure that everybody conducts themselves in a manner representative of a city council person. So that was why Fort Worth did it. And I thought, oh, that makes sense. We should do it here because that possibility exists of someone's spouse putting things on Facebook, and then the council members, oh, it's not me. I don't know anything about that. What are you talking about? So that's what brought that. Robert and I
Yeah.
had that discussion this weekend. So I don't know if we need to go back to the code of conduct and change it on that document, or I suspect that's probably the way to do it, which would be a discussion other than what needs to happen on the charter.
Yeah, I want to talk about that provision anyway, as far as our charter amendments, so I think once we get to that provision, I'd like to talk about that. I had some concerns about it as written anyway.
Okay. So let's just start at the beginning and let Mr. Chester move forward with the first item.
Well, members of the commission, I think I've met everybody here tonight, and glad to be here, members of the council. My name is Pat Chesser. I'm the city attorney here in Keene, and I have reviewed the suggested edits you've made so far, and I wanted to skip over to, you had 1.04, which is the annexation is fine. The first concern I had was over on 3.03, and I think y'all had a question about nominations. And again, I'll just say that this is a little unusual of a charter provision. Usually it just says the council shall elect a mayor pro tem. So I'm not saying it's bizarre or strange, it's just not typical. But that's the way yours is set up, that the mayor shall gets the first crack essentially at nominating the mayor pro tem, and then the council will vote that nomination into effect at the first meeting. If it doesn't happen at that first meeting, then the council then would make the motion to nominate. So it's, again, and of course y'all have had a checkered past with this provision in the last couple go-arounds. And so, again, I don't think it's a problem in and of itself, but I mean, if you put in you can only nominate two, I don't know, it seems a little strange. I guess that's my feeling. I mean, to me, the mayor, if you're going to allow the nomination process, you keep it the way it is, and then the council votes that nomination up or down.
So the issue we had originally is the mayor nominated the first one, voted down. It was basically going through all
Yeah.
6 members. If that's the way it can go, there's no reason to go to a second meeting where the council then reappoints the same people that were appointed and knocked down in the first meeting. She will go through, whoever the mayor is, will go through the first 6 people. And if the council votes no on all 6 people, then it goes to the next meeting where the council then nominates the same people they just voted down.
Well, why would they vote down somebody that?
That's the whole point. It's ambiguous. There's no reason for it to go to council. If it's the mayor gets to appoint, she gets to go through all 6. Otherwise, the mayor gets to appoint one, and then it's open to the council to appoint.
Yeah, that,
Well, of course, it's, right now, the first meeting, it's open for you to nominate the council. So if she gets to the second person, you're all okay with that person, why would you not vote that, why would you not elect that person?
Well, it looks foolish going down the row.
Oh, I agree. Well, that's why I said, it's the council's mayor pro tem. So,
let's change it to where the council nominates the mayor pro tem. Eliminate the mayor choosing the pro tem completely.
yeah, that's the way many charters read.
That's the way it should. If many charters are that way and ours are the oddball, maybe ours is the oddball.
Well, again, it creates a strange process.
Yes.
One meeting are all nominations by the mayor, the next meeting, the council then can take over, so. So if you want to just make it essentially that the council shall elect one of its mayor pro tem, and at the meeting where the canvas is, then we can change it that way.
What say you?
make a motion on it?
Is that what everybody would like to draft up? What I suggested, and I talked with Ms. Schramm before, is tonight I'd like to kind of go through all the issues.
Red points.
And just kind of see if we agree on the concepts, or at least have an understanding of the concepts. And then essentially we can you can make a motion to have me put everything, start getting everything kind of in a formal language and get some of the ballot propositions kind of set
Yes.
up for you. And that way, when you get ready, then you take that, essentially we can turn it into an ordinance for the council. And so that way y'all kind of see how it all fits together. But I think kind of agreeing on all the concept and the verbiage will be important. So tonight I'd like to just kind of explore some of the issues.
So,
Is that
So-
So we
okay?
should make a motion.
So-
Is that okay, or are you wanting to make a motion on this, or you wanting just
Make a motion.
give
Well,
instructions to him?
I'll make a motion that
I'll
we
second
change
it.
the letters, the wording of it, and I'll let him, Mr. Chesser, determine the exact wording. But the council will choose the mayor pro tem.
And go
period.
to this other system and eliminate that first step,
Yes.
okay?
I second it.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion?
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. With the presiding officer being, I mean, with the verbiage that it is right now, are we taking away from the presiding officer's duties? I guess I'm asking more of a question, so that way it doesn't seem like we're steamrolling any mayor. I'm not talking about our current one. I'm just saying, are we steamrolling the mayor by doing that?
We're putting the power back to the people, which is the 6 councilmen that they elected, instead of the 1 mayor they elected.
Yeah, the mayor got the most votes too in every election, so
Yeah.
as a presiding officer right now, this is the way it is. So, I mean, I guess I'm asking Mr. Cheshire, is this,
Well, at the end of the day, you're taking away her ability to nominate who she selects or prefers to be the mayor pro tem. The council, of course, has to vote that person in regardless. That's the way it's set up now.
right?
It just takes away her ability to nominate who she would prefer to be the mayor pro tem. So yes, it does take that power away from her.
So I want to mention, this is not the first time this has happened in our town. And I participated in a similar type of situation when I was on the council. And I think I want everyone to be sure that what your response is and the way you're voting and the feelings that you're having are about what's best for our town and for the future, and not just based on recent events and dysfunction, because there's always going to be some jockeying around in various things. So just having said that, okay, somebody from Mr. Knott?
If I were mayor, I would want the opportunity to pick somebody, let me come up there. If I were mayor, I would want the
Dreaming.
opportunity to pick somebody that I could, feel like I could trust and have faith in as my mayor pro tem. That's only a nomination. The council has the opportunity to vote down that nomination. And that would be the first time, the day that the votes are canvassed. If you vote the nomination down, then you go to the next meeting, and the mayor has lost his or her opportunity to nominate. It then becomes the council's opportunity to nominate.
But that's not the way that the lawyer, Mr. Chesser, said she could do it. My understanding is she was allowed, in this last instance, to continue nominating.
And I think that was probably contrary to what the charter says. But whatever happened,
no, it's-
I don't care what happened.
Is he?
I'm trying to suggest
Right.
what I'd like to see happen. And if I were mayor, I would want the opportunity to nominate Chuck Easley as my mayor. pro tem.
So you're asking that the mayor get 1 nomination?
One,
Okay, see, the charter doesn't say that.
and it's only a nomination.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's up to the vote of the council whether that nomination is approved or not.
I,
If it's approved, we move on. If it's not approved, we still move on to the next meeting. Then the council has the opportunity to nominate.
Yeah, that's not how, I mean, I read it that way, but that's not how the lawyer
Well,
reads it.
it says shall nominate. My interpretation, it doesn't mean she can't nominate 5 different people.
yeah,
Very broad.
And I think I think if you want to preserve the concept of her being able to nominate, then you would just, if you want to limit it to 1, then you say that she has the ability to nominate 1 candidate to be the mayor pro tem, and then, of course, subject to the council vote. And then if that nomination is not
we have a motion.
accepted by the council, then I would just go ahead and have it the same meeting. The council, they may then
I agree.
nominate.
Either way is fine.
Done then.
I'm not up there, so I could live with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I mean,
I
it,
have one choice, Chuck Easley. If you don't want me to have Chuck, then,
Oh,
okay.
Chuck doesn't want it.
Who do you want, and let's move on.
yeah. I mean, that's the way I'm used to seeing it happen, is essentially somebody on council makes a motion that I move to this person to be, and the council votes it up. So it's not,
You want to reduce?
this is not a requirement of the law, it's how your
I would
charter
vote up
is
or
set
down.
up. And
Would you vote up
so
or
if
down?
y'all want to allow the mayor to continue to nominate at least only one person, then we'll specify that
The other cities are.
as the case. Is that how y'all want to do
We
it?
have a motion and a second.
Let it
You
vote
wanna
up or
change
down.
your motion?
Nope, let it vote up or down.
Okay, so, all in favor?
What are we voting on?
We're voting to move it to eliminate the mayor's nomination and to just go to a nomination from the council to choose the pro tem at the first meeting when the vote is canvassed.
So if you like the other option of Mr. Paul's, vote this down.
Okay, so, all in favor? Opposed?
It's tied.
Yeah, see, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Five, okay.
Yeah, there's more.
okay.
And that was to take the power away from the
We're
mayor. opposed
to taking the first nomination from the mayor because it was 5 to 4. Okay. so
5-4, was it 5 for the motion?
I'm
Five,
confused.
5 against it.
Okay, so that motion
So,
failed. Let's move
That
on.
motion has failed. Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we do give the mayor one shot at getting her, or his or her pick for the pro tem. And then in that same meeting, and the council would pick or nominate their choice for the mayor pro tem.
okay,
Second.
And in
okay.
the case of a tie, the mayor would break the tie, I guess.
Yes. Okay. All in favor?
Repeat. I think I'm in favor of that.
Okay, so what we're asking Mr. Chester to bring back is that at that first meeting, after the vote is canvassed, that the mayor gets a nomination. It's either one nomination, it's either up or down, and then it moves to the council. Okay, I think that's a good compromise.
It clarifies it.
It clarifies it, very specific. Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chester, moving on to your next item.
I think
Do
the
you want
next,
to talk about the $100 or $50?
Well, he's going to move to it.
I mean, that's above it.
Oh,
okay.
he went past that? Oh,
Yes, well, I didn't have any issues with that, is that's what you want to do.
yes, sir. We didn't finish the vote? I didn't ask for opposed. Okay. Sorry. Okay, all in favor?
What do we think? What are we doing?
What?
This is the same
Who
thing.
gets one?
Okay, what are we voting
We're
on?
voting to give the mayor one nomination at the meeting when the vote is canvassed, and then it goes, if that fails, then it goes to the council to
Yeah.
make nominations.
Is that not
At
what we
that
just
first
voted?
meeting.
I'm saying.
We didn't get an A count.
Okay. Let's move vote again. Okay, all in favor?
One time.
Opposed?
I think so.
There was
Clarity, that's all we're trying to
no
say.
one was
Yeah.
opposed. Okay,
I'm sorry, I just,
it passes.
Yeah, I did not have any change on 3.2, if that's, 02, if that's what y'all want to do.
Well,
That's the mayor's and council's compensation. Now, you
yes.
did say 50 or 100.
50.
I guess my question was, in looking back at the meeting again, is that an expense allowance with invoices turned in? And it isn't an automatic $50, just here's $50, boom, have a great day, plus 20 for each meeting. So probably 50 is still adequate for that. And you wanted to just have it, must have approval, take out prior.
Take out expenses and just give her.
I would like to clarify, we're not requiring for the first 50 to the mayor any kind of proof of the expense, is that correct?
Just to turn in expenses.
Okay.
Is,
Is that the
excuse me, is
way
that
it is, Mr.
replaced?
City Manager?
Pardon?
Is that the way it is now? In order to get the $50 expense, she has to turn in receipts? So she just walks in, or he just walks in and gets a check for $45 or whatever?
Right now, it doesn't read there's any, that's the next,
Right.
it's basically the mayor's position gets $50 for monthly expenses, and then anything over the 50, they would have to present the invoices or receipts, and you'd have to approve that. Is what-
You know, is this compensation, we talked before about how this is basically a voluntary position anyway. Is that compensation for the additional responsibilities, or is that an expense account?
Usually, that is, the first phase would be the mayor gets a little more than the council because of his or her duties. And then they would have the ability to get expenses as well. So, I mean,
Well, I think there's the anticipation that the mayor attends a lot of
yes.
functions, goes here and there, just within the city, so there is more time put in.
So that's, I guess, to me, just to make it clear, I'd want to make sure that that $50, the way I read it right now in the charter, it is essentially just compensation like you get for your meeting
For attendance.
attendance. So, I mean, I'd prefer just to make it, I mean, this is for simplicity's sake, is the members of council each would get $20, and then the mayor would get $50, and then each of the mayor and the council would have the ability to get any expenses they incur reimbursed, as long as the council approves it.
Approved expenses
Mhm.
by the council?
Yes.
Okay.
Over and above
Like if
Yeah.
you're gonna go to the TML.
TML
convention,
conference, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's what I meant, approved by the council, then that would
Yes.
be,
yeah, but you always send that in, because you might have an overnight stay and a per diem for meals or something, so you have all of that approved ahead. Okay.
Cheryl, are we making motions on every
Well,
one of
we were gonna
these?
Wait, and he was gonna come back with formal language with
Okay.
red line motions.
Well, I kind of like what we did before, just to make sure y'all okay with that concept of 20 for council, 50 for mayor, and then the mayor and the council both can get their expenses reimbursed, provided those expenses are approved by council.
Okay,
Right,
Well,
that's kind of
no,
why I'm
Wait a
asking.
minute, if you're saying 50 for the mayor, are we talking 50 a month? The way I read it, it says the mayor and council get $20 a meeting, then the mayor gets an additional $50 for being the mayor. So it's not $50 a meeting for the mayor, it's 20 for mayor and council,
Yes.
and then the mayor gets an extra 50.
You could do it that way. I'm used to just seeing it, the mayor get a little more for a meeting, but you can do it that way if you want. I mean, it's
Now-
usually per meeting, but, I mean, that's,
It'd
I
be
think it
45 for the
says-
mayor. It's the same
expense
difference.
allowance of, shall receive a monthly expense allowance of $50. So I always thought that the mayor got the $10 that we got, plus then
$50.
$50.
okay?
What is it that you do?
They each, including the mayor, get $10 each meeting,
Mhm.
and then the mayor gets the additional 50.
Okay.
Okay,
So it-
okay,
If you want to preserve it that way, that's perfectly fine. I just want to make it clear,
Okay.
she doesn't have, that position does not have to submit invoices for that 50. We need to make that clear.
Yes.
Okay,
so is there a motion to preserve it that way and have him come back?
so move.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? You still can't hear. Okay, I'm sorry, all in favor?
What's the motion? For him?
The motion is to make
20 and 50, or?
$20, each
Each
council member and the mayor gets $20 per meeting, then the mayor gets a $50 a month, not even an allowance, just a gift, if you will, or a stipend for being the mayor.
It's called a monthly expense allowance.
And any other expenses or?
And any other expenses
It
will be
stays at 50
prior
Yes.
approval by the council.
to 20. Okay,
So the mayor and the council both get 20, and then the mayor gets $50 expense allowance without
Per month.
requirement of proof of invoices or any kind of receipts. And then the city council and the mayor may then get other expenses reimbursed upon approval of the council.
okay. So you move, you second. Let's, all in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor. And opposed? So is that 4 and 4?
No,
Okay, 6-4 to stay with that.
As long as they're approved by the council.
The next provision is at 3.05A, and I just see a question, would like clarification on section 3.05A. What was the question anybody had? You recall?
That was my question.
Okay.
It just was a lot of words that I didn't really, it's like a run-on sentence that went on and on and on. And so I just was wondering if you couldn't maybe make it so my 5th grade public school education could understand what those limitations were, that's all. Didn't want to make any changes, just didn't really understand it.
Let's take the first sentence. I think there are several concepts here. The first one is of course, basically, you can't dual office hold, which is a constitutional prohibition. So, you couldn't serve as the city manager if you're on the city council. I mean, that's pretty self-evident. And you can't be an employee of the city in any capacity at all. So that's crystal clear. I don't see much issue there. Of course, the next concept is also pretty clear. You just can't hold any compensated appointed city office. So again, if you're appointed to be the municipal court judge or city attorney or city manager, you could not be an employee or contract with the city for 2 years is the way I read that. If it's a compensated position, you can't be in that for 2 years after you finish your term here. Then the next one's kind of the complex part, which are the kind of the exceptions. Or they first go in and say, shall not hold any other, that's kind of the dual office holding again, except a notary, National Guard, or any military reserve, or any public office to which may be appointed because office is required to be filled by a member of the legislative body of the city. And so there are certain, say if it was like it points out here, a regional commission that requires each city to appoint 2 members to that commission, that is permissible. That's what it's trying to capture, is all the exceptions. For example, under type B law, up to 4 council members can serve on the B board. So that would be a clear position of you can serve in that position. And so that's what that exception is trying to point out, that there are, if the law allows it, then you can serve in other capacities with the city. Now, these aren't compensated capacities, but there are other positions. Because the first provision just says no other city office. And so that's what the exceptions to the city office are. You can serve in any other role that essentially is allowed by law. And so that's a pretty typical provision. And so if that's just what you needed, I don't see any need for changes. Any questions? All right. The next one was your 3.05
See?
C. And I think the question was, what is clarify the highlighted section in the event of an emergency in the absence of the city manager? And I grappled with that when this occurred previously. I think I would prefer to take out that language and use the language what you have there, which is essentially, and this is the way it's done in most cities, the city manager either has somebody that he's designated. If let's say the city manager's out of the office for vacation for a week, he would basically give a letter to the council and staff, however, by email, however he would do it, and say, Del Martin's in charge while I'm gone, or whoever. And that person will be the acting city manager while I'm out. And so that way, they know who to call. The way this provision reads is that type of designation would apply without any further council action. If it is longer than 30 days, then the council has to take action, and I'm okay with that. I would also like to add, however, that if the city manager doesn't make that designation, then the council can then go ahead and make that appointment. But I think to remove the ability of the mayor to serve as the city manager, that's an unusual provision. To have anybody on the city council to act as the acting city manager is fairly unusual. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, we had a question as staff on this one as well. This does conflict with our emergency operations plan, which does lay out a continuity of government plan. And
Okay.
those are specified staff members. So
Okay.
for example, the city manager, fire chief or police chief, director of neighborhood services, et cetera, it would spell that out in our emergency operations plan.
Yes.
So we did notice that conflicted a little.
Now, so by that plan, who is designated essentially the next in command I assume that's what you're talking about, if you're incapacitated in some way or?
Yes, I believe that plan is, the plan needs to be updated because we don't have a assistant city manager position. So it would be myself, then either the police or fire chief, depending, and then probably the director of neighborhood development services.
Okay, all right. And so, we might just say, instead of, I think, to me, this could correct that, instead of saying, by letter filed, is the city manager may designate an employee, and that plan then would essentially have the designation in it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Any questions? Anybody have further?
Well, the discussion that we were having the other night was what if the city manager hadn't written a letter? Maybe it was something where he or she was incapacitated.
Yes.
And there was no provision in our charter at that time for that eventuality.
Yeah, I think if, basically, it would give him the ability to designate, I would say by maybe just written directive or something like that, delivered to the city secretary. And then if he doesn't make that written directive, or his absence is going to exceed 30 days, then the council would then, by resolution, approve that.
And I know there's some conversation, I think I wanted to put in there that no member shall give an order either publicly, privately, explicitly, or implicitly to any subordinate city manager. Strike that explicitly or implicitly. I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it opens up.
Yeah.
It is a, I think it's clear enough as it is.
So
But-
you don't want to refer to this emergency plan?
Well,
That can change
Okay,
more often than the charter,
okay.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I think if, for example, Brent could say in the written directive that whatever position, if it's assistant city manager, will serve in my absence. In his absence, the public works director will serve. In the absence of the public work, you could have literally that succession plan set up in there. And
That makes sense.
and so that would be his written directive. It'll be a little more, and that way you just make sure he gets it to the city secretary. So written directive delivered to the city secretary. And then basically, if he doesn't make that designation, that written directive and designate, or his incapacity exceeds 30 days and put it on the council agenda, and the council would vote it up or down to appoint somebody. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So in that highlighted area, should we put in the event of an emergency and/or in the absence of the city manager?
I just deleted that and just basically, so it basically says, as the interference language, neither the city council nor any member shall give an order either publicly or privately to any subordinate of the city manager, period. The city manager may, by written directive delivered to the city secretary, designate a qualified employee to exercise the powers, and just the way it reads there. And then, of course, and then I added the language, in the absence of a designation by the city manager, the council will act. Or if his absence exceeds 30 days, the council will act. And then I deleted that last sentence, in case of absence, disability, or illness exceeding 30 days, the city manager's salary may be continued at the discretion of the council. That's going to be by contract anyway, so we wouldn't have that in there.
Okay, so let's do a motion and a vote on this so that it's very specific, since this is so specific.
So
Anyone want to
can
make a
you give
motion
what we're
to
voting
go with
for?
his?
Basically, would be to delete the event of emergency in the absence of the city manager, and just say that the city manager may, by written directive, deliver to the city secretary, designating a qualified city employee to exercise the powers and perform the duties of city manager during the city manager's temporary absence. And then to perform the duties of city manager during absence or disability exceeding 30 days, or in the absence of the city manager designating a person to perform the duties of city manager, the city council may by resolution appoint an officer of the city to perform the duties of city manager until the city manager shall return or such disability shall cease. That's how it would read.
And leave in case of absence of
Yeah,
disability.
take that out, delete that.
Okay, so is there a motion for it to be that language? Or just move on? Okay, move on.
All right. 3.06. Only concern I had was starting with 5. I wanted to add the language as convicted of a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude. And the only reason I wanted to suggest that is just if there, for example, if it was a misdemeanor theft that didn't rise to the level of felony, then it's still a crime of moral turpitude. And there's certain frauds, things like that, that could just be a Class A misdemeanor. And so that's kind of typical language to say felonies or crimes of moral turpitude. Um, And then on the code of conduct, I'm a little, I think we've got to remember this is the removal provisions of the charter. So we're actually, it would be where the council is removing an elected official from a sitting city council member position. And it should be a pretty serious event which that would occur. And if you look at everything there before it, they're all pretty serious. It's basically if you don't come to meetings without any excuses, you no longer meet the qualifications of the job, whereas you don't reside in the ward, or reside in the city. And so remember, our code of conduct incorporates our rules of procedure for the council meeting. So, that means, I would not feel very comfortable removing somebody from a council meeting for, being rude to another councilman or a citizen. I think that opens up a huge can of worms. And so that code of conduct, and I don't have a problem at all looking at adding the spouse and significant other language for the code of conduct, if that's appropriate. I think that as well opens up a can of worms. I understand what you said, Councilman Foster, but at the end of the day, none of us can control our spouse, and to discipline a sitting council person because of what their spouse does, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right to me, and I don't know how we'd have any jurisdiction over that person. We don't, and so it would be basically scolding the city council person because they can't keep their husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend in line with our code of ethics. I just don't see that being workable myself. But I think we've got a code of conduct that we can up to and including censure, but nothing beyond that. But we're talking about removing people from a sitting position. Now, there are some provisions, if you violate the conflict of interest provisions of the code of conduct, I'd rather, if we're going to do it, I'd rather do those types of provisions. And that's why it gets kind of tricky because, we'd have to look and see which ones we feel comfortable with and specify those. I just don't know if doing the entire code of conduct, and I would want to make, if you're going to do it, I would make sure you had at least two or more, instead of just saying repeated, what's repeated, 1, 2, 3. We would need to specify, but I just think it's a pretty tricky proposition for removal from office, and that's what we're talking about here. And we're going to talk a little bit later. To me, and this is always the concern, is there is a provision in our charter for essentially, because remember, everybody on this council was elected, is the electorate can remove them by a recall election. And so that's really the preferred method. If you're going to have somebody removed from office, it needs to be down that path. And so that's my concern. I'll be glad to answer any questions or any disagreements with that. It just,
Comments? Responses?
Well, the intent of that was to put some teeth
I know.
into the code of conduct, because just a letter of censure is just, hey, big deal, right?
Yeah.
So professionally, and then we go, well, okay, you get 3 strikes and you're out. Okay, is that 3 strikes of the same infraction, or is that 3 strikes of any infraction? I mean, I know it's a slippery slope, but I also know that it says that the city council should be the final judge in matters involving forfeiture of office.
Yes.
So if you've got someone, I mean, it's a slippery slope whether we could do that currently.
Well, no, I mean, it would be the grounds as asserted in the, I mean, you can't just determine,
Right,
based
no,
on
but
your own
There's been some
grounds.
gray areas that our current mayor has tread upon that could be argued either way for removal of office. But yet, I think all council members, none of us want that to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
I'm looking at, I think Ms. Schramm put it best. We need to think long-term for the good of the city, and I just think you have to think about what removal is and the extreme measure it is when somebody's been elected to office. They've been elected by the voters of the city of Keene to serve. And I think you just have to remember, that is a solemn role, and we have to be careful. If we're gonna do anything like that, I'd like to look up some of the specific provisions, and I would like to have some willful knowing type language, if we're gonna go down that path. I don't want people to violate it and then say, they didn't, if you had 2 or more violations of that type of language, I would like to see knowing and willful violations. And that would have to be kind of the finding then of the council. I mean, that's if you're gonna do it at all. Like I said, I just don't think we need to set up traps for the unwary. I know that's not what y'all's intent.
Absolutely not.
I mean, the people on the council that are here, this will be, your charter, and I think we just have to remember the reality is that this is an extreme measure, and you don't want to exercise it unless you have to.
Sir, may I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you brought up the recall on there, that the only way that you should do that is through a recall?
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't say only way to should do it. I said that's
Well,
set up that way. Yeah.
okay, set up that way.
Yeah.
So if, for instance, should a city council person be able to set up another council person for a recall, or work to get another council person recalled?
Well, there's no law against it. They're a citizen just like, everybody on the council are qualified voters of the city of Keene, which means they're residents of the city of Keene. So, if you do something like that, it's a pretty risky venture if you're an elected official trying to orchestrate the removal. Not only will that, it'll ruin morale of the organization that you're serving.
Exactly.
But
So I
but-
guess my question was, we had a situation where 3 of our council people were being recalled.
I'm aware.
Okay,
Okay.
so I just was wondering,
We're gonna
that's a
come
pretty
to
bad
that.
situation.
We are gonna come to that item, right?
Yeah, but I think it's appropriate to talk about it in right now. It is recall, it is, if you're on this council, you have every right of all the citizens. So, I don't think it would be appropriate to say, you could sign the petition if you wanted to. Right now, our charter, and what I'm gonna talk about in a minute, in more detail, the process for it, you could be part of that process if you wanted to. You could sign the petition, you could sign the petitioner's committee affidavit that starts the process. But, again, that's, when we talk about it, we'll talk about it more in detail.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
Sure. You want me to look at some language and bring it back to you on that number 7?
Yes, please.
I want to just go up to the 3 consecutive regular meetings of city council, missing 3 consecutive meetings without consent of the council. How does that happen if they're going to need to miss these meetings, are they gonna call down to each person and say, I want your permission to not?
Well, we didn't say
Yeah.
prior consent. I mean, what we did, I know, Mr. Cooper was ill, is that, you know, we basically, at that time, of course, it was the mayor's call. The mayor just kind of read a letter that I've
Right.
told Mr. Cooper that, you know, he can take as much time as he needs to come back, and so that's, I mean, this, again, this is a kind of, hopefully, it's, somebody's not ill, and it's just, you know, maybe there's some circumstances that they're not there, but at the end of the day, if you do it the way you made it, is essentially the council could just put it on the agenda and say, we consent or allow the city councilman, you know, if his
So-
kid, whatever the circumstance.
But there isn't like a person you can go to that gets it on there as in.
No, when you have council action, it would take the council vote in an open meeting.
Okay.
So, so that way,
Assuming you aren't taking it lightly, you're just not.
yeah, yeah.
So-
I mean, you know,
There would-
I would anticipate the way it would happen would be if there's absences from a city council person, that, you know, either the mayor or one of the council people would be nominated to get a hold of them and see what's going on. If they haven't made any contact, find out what's going on, and at that point, report back to the council, and then you determine what you're gonna do next. And, so I mean, you know, there could be circumstances that come up, everything from somebody's job has now pulled them away for a number of times, and it just, but that way, this, instead of before, the way it read, was the prior consent of the mayor. And my question I asked was, what if the mayor's absent? You know, does that just mean the mayor can just decide she's not coming back?
Right.
For 8 months, 9 months? I mean, you know, so that doesn't work. Ultimately, it should be a council overall vote to give the permission, so to speak, to miss these meetings. So I think that's what our change captures. Anything else?
Let's just move forward.
Okay. And the 3.08 change is fine?
Cheryl.
That's the two.
In the past, I know
Go ahead.
we've had council members that just haven't attended meetings, and they realize that, and then if you talk to them and stuff, usually they will just resign, because
Yeah.
Right.
they thought they would be interested in doing it, but it's taking more time than they thought, or whatever the reason might be. But they've just resigned in the past. Is that
Yeah.
your experience?
Oh, yes, yes. That's, yeah. So I'm looking at it, all of a sudden it came to me, well, what do? Call around? You can't call enough people because that's out of compliance.
Yeah.
So, okay, but I get the gist of it now, yes. I did have another question on this page, which
Okay.
is not in all of this, but in the investigations,
Yes.
it's saying that the city council may investigate the affairs of the city, and the official conduct, it's just in section 3.07 of the
Correct.
city department. Is the mayor a part of the city council in this instance? So I guess, you know, it talks about the mayor has, at certain times,
Yes.
is a part of the city council in these instances. And early on in my experience, there was an investigation of a department.
Well, again, remember, if it's going to be, the way it's written, the way I read it, of course, the council is the one that votes. The mayor does not. So the council would have to authorize an investigation
Okay.
into a department of
So
the
that
city.
refers just into the vote of it, but not
Yes.
particularly the investigation part of it.
It doesn't mean you're investigating the mayor or investigating the city council. It's just the council may authorize an investigation
Okay,
of the affairs of the city.
thank you.
And then on 3.09, the question was asked, can we change it from a supermajority or four, not supermajority, but four members of the sitting council to just a majority of the quorum? And the answer is yes, you can. And so if you want to just strike the affirmative majority vote of at least four members of the council shall be required for adoption, then it'll just go back to 3.08F, which is all matters may be passed by majority of the quorum.
Okay, does everyone understand that? Okay, majority of the quorum. I think.
We stopped making motions a long time ago. Do we need to do that on
Yes.
each one that we
Well, no,
agree on?
yes. Well, you wanted to make that motion earlier, and I just want to make sure everyone understands the majority of the quorum. It's not, if you just barely have the quorum. Okay.
I'm just asking.
Okay.
Well, this isn't the final, you're gonna get all the language final and you can vote it up or down. Again, I'm here,
He's-
I wanna hear whatever thoughts you have, and I mean, that's pretty, I mean, it's not controversial, I don't think,
No.
and, the next one, I think, is a pretty big issue that was brought to my attention, which is the switching from a plurality vote for council elections to a majority vote. And the question, I think, was asked, is that something that's workable for Keene? And, by law, if you're a city of 200,000 or more, you have to elect your council members and mayor by a majority vote. And so we don't fit that. We can change it we can by charter elect to do a majority vote. That is permissible. But that means then you're going to probably have more runoff elections, since you would have to have one candidate get more than 50% of the vote. Runoff elections, you ask how much work it is, it's another election. So the city secretary will have to work with, the county, and it'll cost you about $7,500, probably minimum. Depends on how many other people are participating, if any. Since it's a special election, you may be on your own. And so you'll have nobody else defraying the costs of the equipment. Did you talk to what did you find out?
So to do a runoff, like you said, essentially a second election. And the bulk of the cost, if we contract with the county, is going to fall on the city. And it was quoted about $15,000
Ooh, yeah.
for a runoff,
There you go.
just a runoff, on top of the general election
Yeah.
that's held in November. It wouldn't be that much cheaper if we run the elections ourselves, which eventually the city will get to, because we still have to find poll workers and such.
Yeah.
No matter what, there's going to be huge expense and time involvement for staff in finding those volunteers to run the election.
So I don't know if that's something y'all want to consider or not. You certainly can.
But would you want to have the wrong person in office than to have a runoff? I mean, that would be what I would wonder.
Well, the person gets the most votes will get the job. And so, to me, if the electorate wants, they have an opportunity to vote in whoever they want. And if you got three candidates, whoever gets the most votes wins. I don't know if it's any magic to it going to majority. It's still, to me, it's all about voter turnout, voter response. And I was talking to Ms. Schramm, she talked about some of the votes where, 400 people show up. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the initiative and stuff. But low voter turnout is probably the most disappointing thing
Yeah.
for elections. And it's gotten worse since COVID, for whatever reason. But that low voter turnout means basically people are getting elected with very few voters voting them in. So,
But if the two that were gonna do the run, or other two voters got more votes than the one person, that would mean there's more people not wanting that one person than there was wanting that one person. So, I mean,
yeah, it's a higher threshold, it is.
yeah, it just,
Pat, the logistics of it for me explode because you go from an election in November, council takes a seat the next week or two after you canvass the election. So now you're going to have a runoff. When does that runoff take place? 6 months in May is when it will take place.
No,
So
it's 45 days, has to be no earlier than 30 days after and no later than 45. So,
okay.
so, yeah,
It becomes a special election.
yeah,
And we organize that
for
at Christmas,
$50,000.
yeah.
during Christmas.
Santa
That's
Claus.
And see what kind of voter turnout you get for that.
worse.
And didn't you say the population of cities that have the 50 plus 1 votes is 200,000?
They're required by law to do it, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Anybody who's a home rule city can adopt it.
yeah.
So it's any city over 5,000 could adopt it, so.
And sometimes I know it was presented that sometimes the other two, say you have 3 candidates, and it's not that some of the votes that the others got didn't want the person being elected. It's just, maybe they had, friends. It's lots of different reasons. So I personally am against changing.
Anyone else want to talk to this?
I know this sounds great on paper, but that $15,000, we're so small, I'd like to see those funds just, used in other ways. Special events, anything else that can raise our city.
Anyone
Well,
else?
the way I look at this is, ultimately, the decision maker for this is going to be the voters, the populace. So if we throw it out there, let them make the decision. If they vote it down, then, hey, they vote it down, and we go back to the system we've had. If they vote it up, then they want it bad enough that, it's going to get on Facebook how much it costs to have a runoff election, believe me. So
So,
there will be no uninformed voters.
so go ahead and prepare the language for it, and put this on this next election and see if the voters want that, if they want that expense.
Yeah.
That's what you're suggesting? Go ahead and,
I'm not suggesting. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion.
and I was just throwing mine out there for discussion.
Yes.
I'm not for spending that money either. But if there was another way to do this,
Along with what they're asking, or what's being talked about right now, are some of these going to be put in groups to vote, to go to a vote, or is each individual one of these going to be voted upon on its own?
Each one will be voted on its own.
Okay, so then it can stand alone and we let the voters decide, so I actually don't mind that.
yeah, these are like, what are they? Are they referendums, or they're changes, or we're just voting a whole new charter?
No, we're not these are just be charter amendments to our
Charter
existing
amendments.
charter. And so that will basically say, to amend section 4.09 of the charter to now require a majority vote instead of a plurality vote. And
Then we have to make sure that the voters are well-informed about this
Well,
issue.
yeah.
Well, when
And
they
do
have
you-
this, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. And do you think if we have, say, 600 voters vote, do you think that even half of them are going to really study the charter amendments to know what they're voting for?
Well, I always read every single thing.
We have to hope they will.
Well, y'all make your recommendation to the council as a whole, and, if y'all are whatever recommendation y'all want to make, that's what you do.
Okay.
Because it won't just say a majority vote or a plurality vote. It will have the exact verbiage that we're changing it to.
Correct.
So,
The ballot itself won't have all the language. What we'll have is, we'll have the printed changes published in the newspaper as well as on our website, and we'll have it'll be part of our election ordinance. And so the actual ballot will just change from a plurality to a majority vote, amending section blank of the charter.
But we can circulate all those various things. We can have a
Yeah,
print.
we'll have all the proposed language will be out there for the citizens to see.
I'm sure if it goes, like, for instance, in the Times Review, we can get additional copies of that to circulate amongst people and make sure people are being informed about what these changes are.
Because we're gonna have to publish it in the newspaper, the verbiage change in both English and Spanish, which it's gonna cost thousands of dollars to do that. Just to let you know.
I'm in favor of leaving it alone, for what it's worth.
Well, do we,
I think
second.
we'd rather have potholes filled. Or streets.
Should we do a motion on it?
yes, does someone want to make a motion?
What we've all got to realize is when we finish here, it goes to council. And there's several council people already up here who spoke against it. So keep that in mind.
I make a motion to leave it the way it is.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Say hi.
Opposed? Okay. Pardon? Two absent. Two abstentions? Eight? Okay. Who hasn't voted? She's second. Okay, let's take, all in favor? Okay. Opposed? Okay. It's unanimous.
The next change is at 5.01, A1. And my comment originally was about the,
Just a moment.
sure,
Can we
absolutely.
just take a little recess, 5
Yes,
minutes?
absolutely.
Anybody? I
Absolutely.
know last time we had people that needed it. Just
Sure.
Mr. Chesser?
Yes, ma'am. On 501.1, the provision previously required prior notice and consultation to the city council on any appointment of a department head or director of a administrative department. And I know it came up with the previous city manager, and I've talked to Brent about it, is, you know, what does that mean exactly? And I've often seen it where it requires either confirmation by the council or approval, or is it just, you just tell them and it happens. And so I noticed you changed it to take out the consultation part and just have notice to the council. And I'd like to get some discussion of how you anticipate, what will the city manager have to do? Is it, I mean, if it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to give you notice and appointment after he's appointed the person. Because, I guess to me, the reason you would, obviously he's going to let you know when he makes department decisions. But do you want to have a say, confirm it? To me, that's the only positive thing of a presented to council confirms it is at least if the council's not pleased with the appointment, they then can tell the city manager at that time and head off any impasses you may have. But right now, if it just says you have to give notice, that means he could hire somebody, terminate a department head, and then a week later just say, oh, by the way, I appointed the person or I fired them, or a month later, or 6 months later. So what do you expect the process to be to make sure the city manager doesn't do something that, and typically the city manager is going to say, I've located, you're going to know the positions that are open if you're on the council, and the city manager is probably going to let you know, hey, I've located a candidate, I'm interviewing them today, I'm going to give them an offer. But just to make sure we have the expectations clear, is this, since it's not going to be prior notice, is it within a week, 2 weeks? What do you think about it, Brent? Is it, would that give you concern if you're the city manager about notice? How would you fulfill that?
Yeah, I guess the way I read it, I would make that move and then probably almost immediately just email that move to council to let everybody know, hey, this happened today and here's what we're doing, so.
Okay. Well, if you're okay with just leaving it, just giving notice, that's like I said, I just didn't want it to be a trap for criticism of the city manager if he does it 2 days, if he's, happens to go out of town and forgets until Monday, or any thoughts by council?
I think you've struck out the most important word. That's prior.
Okay.
And it, in my opinion, it's reassigned or terminated without prior notice to the city council. Now, you want to get into the 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, understand that, but I think we're stretching there.
Yeah.
Prior is just immediately prior to his appointment, in my opinion.
Well, like I said, we struck prior is what has been done. It really is now, does it mean he has to be before? Or right now we struck out prior, so it would be, doesn't have to do it before. It would be after the fact.
Say
I
that
see
part
it as
again.
informational purposes, just so the council knows. That is his job, to hire and fire as he sees necessary. And I don't think that we would be doing ourselves or him any favors by limiting that to get our approval or disapproval of it, so.
Well, we mentioned it before. We don't want to read it in the paper.
No, I don't want to be in the.
So prior notice is immediately prior to this.
Yeah.
By email, which was done recently. Everybody knew. and we moved on.
So it's really leave in prior and strike and consultation of? Okay.
Well, just playing devil's advocate here for just a moment. Right now, we're very blessed with a excellent city manager, but this is a charter's set in place for a long time. What if we get somebody who's not as strong as Mr. Batla in that position? Does the council want to have any input in who goes where?
Well, technically, we can't give input.
Well, you can if the charter allows it.
It's, in my opinion, I read it, I may read it different, it's so we know.
Well, right now it says prior, without notice and consultation of the city council.
No, we don't, I don't want to, I'm not recommending put the consultation.
Well, that's
Let's
why I'm
just
saying
put
that's
it,
why-
no director or head of any administrative department, however, shall be appointed, reassigned, or terminated without prior notice to the city council.
Right, I understand that's what you wanted to say. I'm playing devil's advocate and saying Mr. Batla has moved to, now he's the city manager of Fort Worth, and we're stuck with somebody who doesn't have his skill set. Does the council want to have any input at all in who our fire chief, police chief, those types of people are?
Well, couldn't that also then?
The charter says now, it says consultation.
Yeah, but would that possibly could amount to someone trying to micromanage the city manager? If,
Usually, I think to me, I'd look at it two different ways. The appointment process, I can see how that'd be prior, and it would have some merit to it. The termination part is a little less, because that way, if it ever gets to council, we have a grievance process, correct? I mean, they could appeal any decision of his to the council. So you could play a role in that process if there was some grievance filed. But I guess if you just want to have prior notice of the hiring or termination, that's okay. You at least have notice of it. You wouldn't have a say in the termination. Like I said, some cities do, the city manager shall appoint a department head, and that department head shall be confirmed or approved by the city council. That's happens on occasion. Some charters provide that.
I don't think that's what we're after, though.
No, that's not what it is. So you just, right now, I've got in leave in prior, delete, and consultation of the city council.
I'm going to play devil advocate even further. If we hire a city manager and the city council feels like he's not doing the right job, then the removal should be the city manager. So then that way we get the right person in play. So then that way there is the trust factor that the city council is after. If that makes sense.
So how do you want it to read?
I don't know. No, I like the way it is right now with the change that's there now, because then we're giving the power to him. It's just an informing of the council.
So,
With the prior notice, it makes it to where it's almost like I'm asking, if I'm the city manager, I'm asking for approval from you guys. What do you think before I do this? And since you all elect the city manager to sit there and make those decisions, then he's really not making those decisions. You take it away.
would it not show confidence on his part to just basically let his city council know when he's gonna make a move, he or she's gonna make a move? That's not asking a lot, just prior notice. Send an email out. There it is. I'm making my move today, here it is. That way you don't come in to the city council meeting and say, where's the police chief? Oh, he fired him last week, I forgot to tell you.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I just don't want it to be if it's too prior, then there's a lot of talking that gets going on, and then, then it can turn into a political battle.
Immediately prior, if that makes you feel better.
Well, we had, something that comes to my mind is, remember the noise ordinance we were talking about a while back with the Jake brakes on the 18-wheelers, and the comment was brought up, well, if we have an ordinance on the books, it's our choice whether we enforce it or not. This consultation part, in my mind, is similar to that, is that we've got it in here. If we leave it in here, we've got it if we need it. If we don't need it, which we don't now, hey, business as usual. But I'd like to see that, I would like it to say terminated without prior notice and consultation to the city council.
But is that consultation to question his judgment, or is it because? Is it to question his judgment on who he's appointing or who he's terminating or whatever? And if he gave you notice of it that day that it's happening, would that not be enough rather than him having to come and ask everybody, what do you think? Or I'm terminating this person and.
The consultation would require putting it on the agenda and put it in executive session. And that's just, so you need to know that should be the process for consultation with the council. So you can't just call everybody on the phone and tell them that that's not, because it's to the city council, so it becomes essentially a meeting of the council. So that's just, you remember that's the formality of it.
Right.
That puts the city manager in that difficult position, especially if it's, something's happened, and that means they will probably have to send them home without pay or with pay, pending, the council. Otherwise, even though you don't have any approval, it just seems, he can't make final action without consulting with you, so.
And that makes for a delayed engagement or disengagement either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does give some measure of protection if the council wanted, if you got a bad city manager in and the council says, wait a second, why are we getting rid of the police chief or fire chief? And it sounds fishy to you. Technically, the city manager could go ahead and do it, because it doesn't say approve it, but at least you would be on high alert to a problem that's coming down the path. So there are some advantages to it. I just know that I've talked with Brent about it, and I talked with the previous city manager about it. He wasn't used to that type of provision. I'm not talking about Brent, the previous city manager. So,
So is your recommendation to leave it as is, or?
well, right now, yeah, I would, what I have written down is that leave it with prior notice to the council. So Brett could send out an email and say, I'm doing this.
Just strike the consultation?
Yes, correct. So he didn't have to wait, call a meeting, and then discuss it, and then take action. That to me would give him more latitude, like y'all said. His purview is all staff members except for the city attorney, the judge, and the city secretary. So all the other employees, he will have the final say on them, and he'll give you prior notice. I think that's kind of a compromise of, if that's okay, then that's what I'll weave in there.
Okay, is everybody fine with that, or do you want to have a motion, Rob, for something else? So just continue on.
Yeah.
Striking prior, or leaving prior,
Leaving
striking
prior.
consultation.
Striking consultation.
Okay.
Right. And then on,
Mr. Battler?
sure.
Oh, I just have one comment. Thank you for the kind words. I was getting a little bit nervous. We've talked about my removal, my extended absence, and my demise tonight. So, thank you.
There's another section coming.
You're back to your demise again, or disability, you know. 501D. And so I think we need to make this consistent with the, whatever language that is, which is 3.05C.
501C.
Which is what we talked about earlier, which is the city manager will designate by written directive delivered to the city secretary his city designee as city manager, and then if it's longer than 30 days, or if he doesn't make the designation, the council will do it. So that will be consistent with 3.05C. Is that okay?
Is it necessary to say that in both areas?
No, that's a good point. I actually had in there the previous, and I think the reason you got to understand the way the charter is structured, the original one is the council's powers, and so that's kind of talking about the council's powers to appoint that person if it's longer than 30 days. And then this would be kind of the city manager's powers side of it. So I don't see it being inappropriate to have it, because I thought about the same thing and remove it just in one, but I think it is, the spirit of it is to have, you could reference the other provision. It'll be, you know, filled as set out in 3.05C. You could do that. But the point is, be the same process.
I'm glad my lawyer instincts are kicking in.
Brevity. Anything else on that one? The next change that I had was your, on page 19, which is the 6.16F. And I don't think we need to, somebody said cite the legal code here. I wouldn't do that because the codes will change. I mean, you could always cite 271 of the local government code. I mean, we could say that if you want, but it just says, according to the law of the state of Texas. I mean, these codes are recodified, reset out. So I think it's sufficient if you just said in accordance with the laws of the state of Texas.
Okay, is everyone fine with that? We're just going to get rid of all of F except for this little bit that he's giving us, this 1, 2
Yes.
sentences.
Do we need to make a motion on that one, or are we good?
No,
That one should be a non-controversial one, I think.
yeah.
All right, here comes the more controversial. So this is the initiative, referendum, and recall provisions. And this one, as Ms. Gillen pointed out, we had some experience with this in the last couple of years. Not so good. But the process, just I want to give you all a few kind of little background on it. You know, our charter, let's start, does everybody know what initiative is? If you don't, it basically means the citizens can essentially petition the city to pass a law. So they present an ordinance, essentially, we want you to pass it, and they present it to, if you have the petitioners, 20 petitioners sign the affidavit to start the process, and they get the required petition signatures, then they would have a form ordinance that they want you to adopt. The council will then have ability to adopt it or go to an election on that initiative. Referendum is the opposite. It's to repeal a law. So both of the same process as well as recall. And recall, I think that's one we dealt with most, which is the recall of a sitting city council member or mayor. And our process requires that two-step process. The petitioner's affidavit, which means 20 citizens sign it, present it to the city secretary, who then essentially issues and signs off on a petition, gives it to the petitioner's committee affidavit spokesperson, who then distributes the petitions for signature and has to return them within a set period of time. If they return them in a set period of time, the city secretary then evaluates the petition signatures to ensure that they're valid, that they're within the city limits of Keene, to make sure they're qualified voters. And so the process does not require any, we don't require a reason to be stated for the recall. It's just purely just a recall. So some charters have in there that you have to state a reason for it. It has to be clearly stated why this recall has started. Now, again, it could just be incompetency, general statements, so I don't know how much notice it gives you or anything like that, but it does at least give some context for the recall. Some charters don't require that first step of the petitioner's affidavit. It's just you go out and get the required number of signatures, which we require 30% who voted in the last city, 30% of the people that voted in the last city election, not less than 200. And I noticed y'all struck that language of not less than 200. And I'm concerned about that mainly because if we had 400 like you suggested, we're not going to have, you could literally have these decided by 50 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think there is probably some merit. If you're having low turnout in your elections, to have that minimum number, you wouldn't think it would kick in, but, it very well could. Your numbers this last election were pretty low, I think, weren't they?
Well, if you have 3,500 registered voters and you have only 1,200 that participated, and then some of those other elections, at times in the past, I've seen them be like 458 people voted on the off years. Now, it's been a while since I've looked at all those numbers because I haven't watched them as carefully now that I'm not on the council, but you do want to know that a significant number of the voting population really wants this,
Yes, exactly.
at least from my point of view.
That's why I would not strike the minimum, at least 200 signatures of registered voters because of that. It just.
Okay.
Well, ultimately, the populace will be the ones that make the decision. So if 30% of 400 is about 120 people, 120, 200, 250, where do you draw the line to just put it on the ballot? It's just a numbers game, but yet it's ultimately going to be decided on the general election, which is the 700 or however many show up to vote. So that's.
Well, I would say the general trend of cities is to raise the level to get it to the election just because of the costs and the fallout. Elections, most recall elections fail. It's like 90% of them fail. And so they're going to cost you a lot of money and very divisive. So I would say the trend is most cities to keep the numbers higher on the higher end. Ours won't be that high anyway, but it's saying a minimum of 200 signatures. That's just to give you some context. Y'all do what you want to do. I'm just telling you that most charters are looking at those requirements to ensure that they're not just a few people that are out to get somebody, because it's a pretty, as you all well know, it's a very divisive process. And
Total of the two mayors that ran last time, 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it was 820 votes, there
Oh.
two together.
And that's really low. I can remember it being 12.
It's very, very few.
But as far as the expense, this will be on the general election. It wouldn't be done for a special election.
No, it's a
Recall.
special election,
A recall. A recall is a special election.
yes.
You don't wait till the next election cycle if you have a recall.
No, special elections are only held on uniform election dates, so it would be, if the petition was submitted in a timely manner to get it on the November election, you could have it on the same date. Remember, Texas only has 2 uniform elections, so the May timeframe, if you miss the cycle, will push it in to May.
Right. So that's why I'm saying that the expense aspect of it is moot, because we're not gonna have a special like tomorrow, like in 30 days.
No,
have an
Like
election.
for the,
no.
for the
Well,
rumble.
if it's in our regular election cycle, you're
Right.
right, it won't cost anything extra.
Right.
If it's in May, you'll have
Right.
you're gonna have to have another election that you didn't plan for. But it's not that as much as, I'm just, again, if you don't have the 200 in there, you could literally have 30% of whatever. If it's 400, that's, less than 100. A little over 100, 113, 130. So, not many. That's the downside. And the trend is to raise the bar up a little bit.
Vote for everybody, a lot didn't.
And then, of course, that's one issue, the threshold. And then, of course, the other, if you recall, the other issue is, and most charters have limitations or restrictions on when this can be used. So right after you get on council, they give you a 6-month grace period, typically. Some do a year. But when you have 2-year terms, that 6 months is plenty. I'm not advocating that. But the way ours is set up, it's only, the restriction is 6 months after, and we also have, you can't do it 6 months after the last petition was submitted to the city secretary. So, the way it's read, it's only, so a petitioner's affidavit is submitted to the city secretary. She then issues the petition. What happened is we never got a petition back. And so then a subsequent recall was started again within about 45 days. And it then, no petition was ever submitted. So theoretically, another one could have been done, and another one could get done, and another one, until a petition is finally submitted to the city secretary for her evaluation. Then it would prohibit any subsequent for 6-month period. And so that became quite a divisive point, that the city secretary should have prohibited that the subsequent petition affidavit of the petitioner's committee being submitted, but that's not what our charter says. And so that was one thing I wanted, you who lived through it, you know what I'm talking about. Again, this is a right of the voters, of the citizens, to recall seated, so you may not want to limit it. You may want to keep it the way it is. But I'm just telling you, that's what it is right now. That gives the citizens the right to start the process, stop it, reorganize, start it again, and then finally present their petition. And you just have to realize that if we keep it the way it is now, that's the way it will be.
I was part of that recall.
Mhm.
And the reason it was stopped and started was because of misinformation.
I'm not
No, I
saying it's
understand.
bad or anything like that.
No.
I'm just saying the charter, the way it's written, it's because, if you wanted to put the restriction, you could say, if a petitioner's affidavit for recall of a candidate is submitted, then it can't be. That could be the point. If you want to do that. Again, that's, some don't have that restriction. So it's purely up to us how we want to limit this citizen right.
my question was going to be, on this, the first one that was not turned in, there was the 20 people for the committee. It was requested that or said that we had to turn in those names. And then on the second one as well, that we had to turn in not just the committee of 20, which we have to turn in, but all of the other names that people, when they signed the ballots. And that I had a problem with, because we withdrew because the group decided in the best interest of our city to withdraw that recall. And so there was no need to turn in those names, especially when they were threatened if they got the names.
Yeah, no, it doesn't require you to submit the petition.
Thank you.
And
I needed to know that we did the right thing.
It does not. I mean, you can't make the petitioner submit a petition. So it would fail. Now, again, if you want to say that if the petition doesn't come in, you can't, again, if you make it the petitioner's affidavit as being the event that started the process, then you could say that you can't do it within 6 months of that petitioner's affidavit being submitted. And that's just what I want to make sure. I'm not advocating either way. It is again, this is a citizen right. If you want to lower the threshold like you're talking about, not having the 200 minimum, leave it there. That's purely up to y'all. I just want to make sure we understand kind of what happened. And there was a lot of unhappiness about the multiple affidavit things submitted.
Sir, is there any way that we can put the verbiage in there to where whoever is requesting to get the petition for the recall can get the correct information, or have whoever is, like, let's say the city secretary gives you the rules and the requirements and how you do it, what the number is and stuff like that? It might be in the charter, but most people don't read it.
It shouldn't be in the charter, though. That should.
Yeah, I mean, really, we need to, if we're going to put it, we need to have it in the charter. The charter process, what will happen is that the city secretary will check on the number of voters, and she'll have that number, and she'll communicate that with you.
To the person, okay.
Yes, and so, that's the process.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any way to make it where it's not a Public Information Act susceptible?
No, once it's presented to the city, it's, everything in our possession is presumptively open records. And so you'd have to look at all the provisions to keep certain things confidential. And of course, any petition like that is, you can imagine the critical nature of it is the signatures, the addresses written down. And so that has to be subject to scrutiny by everybody. So there's no way to withhold it. No way.
Then I say we just leave it the way it's written.
Anybody else?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
There was a question about the names on the original affidavit that the 20 signed. Is there any way to keep that private, but once it's turned into the city, does it become open records?
It does. Once it's submitted, it's presumptively open records.
Okay.
And you can imagine, if you're, you're a sitting council person, you get this petition, you want to see it, and others will want to see it. And it is, it's a public process, and so you can't keep it confidential.
I'm going to ask this question to the whole group. Since some people are having a issue with the 20, and then, of course, that being exposed, what about taking that out completely, like Mr. Chesser just said, and then it just goes direct to getting signatures to put a recall in place, so there is no petitioner committee? Is that
Well, isn't the committee there for some kind of guidance in,
Well, I mean, it's no different. I mean, the same people who are interested in doing it are gonna go get the petition signatures.
well, that's what I mean, but it would be the ones that are going to get the petitions rather than just having a whole bunch of them out there that people could copy and recopy and stuff like that.
The only difference would be is whoever starts the process would need to get the petitions in order. We could still leave it to where the city secretary will sign off on the petition form, the blanks. Then it's up to the person requesting them to circulate the petitions and present them within the required number of days.
Okay, and they should all be turned back in, yeah.
So the reason this is being, the reason I'm suggesting it is exactly that. So right now, you have to send a petition. Well, then now you've got 20 people who are vulnerable. Instead of being able to go out and get signatures on the down low, and of course, I'm just using this as an example, where you could essentially go out and do just the canvassing on your own, and then the liability is lessened on the people that are doing that until the word gets around. And of course, I'm not advocating for, the wrong thing being done here. I'm just looking at it as a, the 20 signatures is a divisive, it could be used as a device for somebody, is all I'm saying.
Well, everybody's name's gonna be on it anyway.
It is, but then by that point, it's too late. It's already turned in when you have enough signatures.
Anybody else have a thought on that? Well,
I
you
agree.
know that I preferred it to keep the affidavit, because then you at least find out if you even have 20 people that are interested in pursuing this. Now, I think that it had been thought that only those 20 could collect the signatures on the petitions, that you couldn't send anyone around with a petition to collect signatures unless they were one of the 20. Is that correct, the way we have it now?
That's correct.
Yes, I think that's set up that way, yes.
So if we got rid of that, then where do you get the people collecting the signatures? What is your pool for that?
I mean, it would just, you have the petition, it's circulated, and it's brought back.
So you just start a petition and send it around and somebody comes? I mean, only the person who is going to circulate the petition, are they the only one, or can they send other folks out to assist them?
They sure can. They can send out other folks. It's just literally you take the petition and you circulate it and you present it within 40, whatever, I think ours is 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
And you present that to city secretary. If you've got the required numbers, she verifies it, and then it's presented to council.
Okay, so as far as people being vulnerable, if they're going to be vulnerable to the, culture, as we spoke last time, changing the culture,
But you never get all that.
that's going to happen anyway, whether they sign the affidavit, they're on the affidavit or the petition. There will be the other people who are upset about it and go after them. That just seems to be the way it is.
Yeah, I don't, the whole part about going after people doing it, I don't,
We can't put anything
Yeah,
in the charter to prevent that.
no, I mean, that's just, it's basically you have to put your name on it.
Mhm.
and if-
So you still have to own it.
So if you just had certain people, or could give it to anybody to go out and get chances of getting it back are not
Not,
real good, and, because even with the 20, I didn't get them all back. So.
you're signing for them,
I'm sorry?
and you're signing for them.
Yeah, and
with
I'm
the city
signing for them,
secretary. I think it gives
or
you
whoever.
a level of security also, or a surety that you will get the petitions back if you're organizing it. I don't know. It depends on how well you know the people you're passing them.
Exactly.
Well,
Still a
obviously,
committee.
you had to get 20 to do that, but if you had 6 or 8 motivated, then, okay, how many did you get back?
Which time?
I mean, how many people turned their ballots in, or their,
Oh, how many of the 20 turned their
Yeah.
things back in? I would say probably only 8
There you go.
Actually, no, only 8 actually went out to get petitions. And out of that 8, there probably was 6 of them that brought them back. There were 2 that did not.
So that's why I'm saying the petitioners committee obviously is not valuable, even in that situation that was as volatile as it was. So my recommendation is we just eliminate that, like Mr. Troy said, and then I leave the 200 in there so that they have to at least go out and do their due diligence, and then let the chips fall.
Anybody else have something to say in regards to that? Do you want to make a motion for that one to instruct him to specifically, or just?
Sure, I'll make a motion to eliminate the need for the petitioners committee, and then leave the 200, the number 200 in there of the registered voters, a minimum of 200 of the registered voters, not those who voted in the last election.
I second that.
Okay,
Now, is that on 10:05?
so we have a motion and a second. Is that all the discussion?
10:02 is the petitioner committee.
Okay.
Yeah, the petitioners committee applies to initiative, referendum, and recall. So now it'll just be the same process. They'll have to do the petitions just straight up.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Of doing away with the affidavit process. Okay. Opposed?
Three to 7?
Did everyone vote?
Yeah.
You didn't count everyone? Four? If-
All right, raise your hand high for 4.
It's 7. Okay. Okay. Looks like we're dropping the affidavit.
And we're getting down to 11:09.
Still gotta go through council.
And this was a question, can this be changed to an ordinance instead of being in the charter? So that it may be updated as needed. And really, my comment is, this really is tied to local state law and/or local ordinance if we wanted to pass it. So if we wanted to do a code of conduct for city employees, for example, you could have that language in there. What this says now is you cannot accept an employee or officer of the city, shall not accept any gift, favor, privilege, or employment from any firm or corporation doing business or proposing doing business with the city in violation of state law or local ordinance regarding such matters. So it's only if state law prohibits it. So for example, as far as gifts, de minimis gifts are allowed under state law. If somebody brought by donuts and put them down at City Hall, that's not an illegal gift. It's $50 is usually the threshold. So if you left it just the way it is, it does incorporate state law and any ordinances you may pass. So I think that probably takes care of your concern.
So we can just leave it as is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And that is a standard provision. And that's all I had, or saw.
It's 8:02,
We did it. Close enough.
so I guess now I owe you 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Speaking of minutes, did we approve of them?
So he's going to take it back and then bring the language back to us.
Did we do anything about
No, I'm saying that, didn't we table the minutes for April 11th and April 23?
No, I
No,
think
they
we
were
approved.
approved.
They were approved.
They were approved.
Oh, okay.
Did we cover page 2? The annexation?
Yes.
It's a moot point.
Oh.
Yes, because it's state law.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Raise up.